Hi everyone, time for another Tommy Emmanuel song. Today we'll be taking a look at the Timberlake Road. Now this tutorial is already version 2. I already recorded and edited a full video, and then when checking a little small part on YouTube of which I wasn't really sure, turns out that I was playing a whole section wrong, or at least differently from what Tommy was doing. Same thing happened yesterday with the Luttrell tutorial. I was busy editing and figuring things out, and turns out as well that I was playing a few key parts completely different than what Tommy's doing. That doesn't really matter in the long run, but it does matter if you're making a tutorial video and you want to show you guitar players how Tommy actually plays things. So here we are with version 2. Guitar is in standard tuning and all you need is a thumb pick, but you do need to have a firm grasp of how to use the thumb pick. So if you haven't got the steady boom chick bass part down yet, then first learn a few other songs. I will be covering Countrywide and Windy and Warm quite soon on the channel, but there are loads of other songs, Freight Train, or maybe even the basic thumb picking exercises Tommy features on his channel. Make sure you get those down before attempting this song. Now, this song is a great song to get down to improve your technique. What you will learn in this song, and as well in Luttrell, which is coming in a few days, is that Tommy, he's an amazing guitar player. He can play the most complicated stuff, but most of all, he's a very smart guitar player. In this song, you will see that he divides the workload of that fast winding melody between the left hand and the right hand. The right hand is mostly busy playing that boom chick bass pattern, but as you will see, the right hand isn't actually doing that much at all. Most of the work when it comes to the melody are left hand techniques, and the focus in this song is going to be how to time those left hand techniques so they form a perfect balance or a perfectly timed whole unit together with the boom chick bass line that your thumb is going to keep playing all the way through. Enough talk, let's have a look and let's see how we can get this thing into our fingers. Let me play the first section for you, and then I'm going to come back and give you the explanation where needed. That's already the next section. We'll have a look at that in a few minutes. Now, the first thing you probably notice is that long winding melody over each and every single A chord you have to play. This is where that cleverness comes in. This is where Tommy divides the workload between the left hand and the right hand. I'm going to pick that little part apart note by note, and I'm going to show it to you, building up one note at a time. It's really imperative that you get this part down really well, because it's repeated, I think, about 100,000 times over the course of this song. This is really the core of the melody. So we're going to start out by just playing the boom chick bass pattern across two strings. So we're starting out with an open A string and the middle finger on the second fret of the D string. This is the basic accompanying part that you will have to play each and every time you play this melody. So A note, D note, and always just alternating. Then the very first melody note, you will be playing this with the index finger on the first fret of the G string. A bit slower. Sounds a bit strange, bit dissonant, that G sharp against the A chord, but you will be sliding this note up to the second fret right away. And this is right away where that timing mechanism comes in. As you slide up, you have to make sure that the note you're aiming for, the A at the second fret, lands at exactly the same time as you're hitting the E bass note with the thumb pick. So I'm only playing the thumb pick, and the melody note is just a slide going up. So I'm not using any fingers. on the right hand when playing the melody note. It's only the thumb that's playing. With the muting. Next note we'll be adding is the open B string. In between the bass note on the bass note on the 4th string, and the bass note of the 5th string. Done, we will be hammering on with the ring finger to the 2nd fret, and again the same timing principle. You make sure that when you land the hammer on, it's in perfect timing with the next bass note. So far so good. One more technique is left and you will be sliding this ring finger 2nd fret up to the 3rd fret. Now this gives you a rather awkward fingering, so sliding this up to the 3rd fret actually hurts in the wrist. So what does Tommy do? He just lets go. So as you slide up, you will be letting go of the other 2 fingers, and this makes that your last bass note of the bar is actually an open D string instead of the 2nd fret. Let me play a G chord right behind that bar so the timing makes a bit more sense. So no more techniques to be added in with the left hand, but there's one melody note left. You'll be playing this with the middle finger, just an open E string. Together with that open D string. Make sure if you play the song that that open E string rings out across the next bar as well. So, and that's the main melody. Now, as you can see, the right hand isn't actually doing all that much. You have the bass line going, and the actual notes you have to play in the right hand are adding in the left hand techniques. So what you're doing is the exact same thing. You're only playing 3 melody notes. Everything else is done by the left hand, but the timing of those techniques has to be kept in perfect sync with the bass line that keeps going underneath. Now, if you got that down, everything else that comes in this very first section will actually feel quite easy. So let me show you the rest of the chords and melody that follows this little part. Going from a G added 9th with the ring finger on the 3rd fret to a G added 9th without the ring finger. To a D chord with an F sharp in the bass, and to a full G chord. And those are the only 2 variations you get in this melody. that's the main melody of the very first section. There are a few variations that Tommy puts in. The very first thing is the strum with the back of the nails. So he's just strumming with the back, striking the strings with the back of the nails softly. And you can sort of choose when you want to add this in. He doesn't really follow a certain pattern. One time he just plays the whole bar, and the other time he adds in the strum with the back of the nails. So that's something you can add in where you feel it is appropriate. If it feels weird, or if you have to still focus to get the bass line or to keep the bass line going, then leave out that strum and just focus on the bass line. That's the most important part to get down before you add in any variations. Just the bass line. You can sort of put it where you want it. If you don't want to add it in, then just keep the boom chick part going. And then there is a second variation that he uses in the melody. So this is the main melody. And quite often, the second time around, he actually leaves out this very first G sharp and he starts on the A on the second fret right away. So the main melody once more. Variation. And the variation. Make sure that if you play the variation, you play the A note with the index finger on the right hand and then the B string right away with the middle finger. And the top E string with the ring finger. So that way you can get that A note and B string in really quick succession. And then there's only one part left of that very first section. That's a D chord on the 5th string and a D chord on the 5th fret, root note on the 5th string, and a C chord 2 frets down. You are extending the bar across the full 6 strings because you need that low A bass note for the bass line. What we'll be doing is we'll be playing a pull off and then a hammer on. It's 2 times the same note, so you're starting on the 5th fret on the high E string, pulling off with the pinky from the 7th fret to the 5th fret on the bar, middle finger on, ring finger on the 7th fret of the G string, back to the B string and hammering on with the pinky. Adding in the bass note again and making sure, the same technique, if you pull off, the note you're aiming for has to land on the exact same spot as the bass note with the thumb pick, and if you do the hammer on, exactly the same thing. And the same thing on the C chord. One variation that Tommy puts in this part is also something you will be seeing a lot in the next section, is you can choose to put this very first melody note on the beat or before the beat. So you can get this 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can put it in front of the beat, this very first note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. The second time, when you're moving down, it's actually always in front of the beat. Take note of this because in the next section, this variation will actually pop up quite a lot. The first melody note on the beat or the first melody note before the beat. Again, if you watch Tommy play it, there's not really a strict or set way he does this. One time he plays it in front of the beat, the next time he plays it on the beat, but it's different in each and every live version you can find of him playing this song. So that's all you need to play the first section. Let me play it one more time for you, a bit slower, so you can follow along, and then we're off into the next section. that's section number 2. I'm gonna play that through one time, a bit faster, not full speed like Tommy does, so you can follow along, and then I'll be back with the rest of the explanation. That's the second section. Now let's have a quick look at how that works. You're starting out with the same A major fingering as you already used in the first section, namely middle finger, index finger, ring finger. Some people play their A chord like this every single time. For some people this will be new, but you need it since you have to change all the time from an A chord to an A major ninth and back to an A chord. In this fingering, this is actually quite easy. In the other fingering, you would have to swap around quite a lot. So we're starting out with the A chord. And the pull-off pattern is actually the exact same descending thing you already played on the D chord and the C chord as well. Making sure that as you pull off to the open string, you hit the bass note at the exact same time. On the fourth string bass note, going to the A major ninth, and then going back to the A major chord. Both chord changes are played on the bass note on the fourth string. Going to the next chord, and this is the hard one. This is the hardest fingering of the whole song. So you're playing, again, the same A chord, but with the thumb over the side of the neck to make this an F sharp minor 7th chord. Now, what makes this hard is that C sharp you have to add in with the pinky. Adding in the pinky and then going to that same E note on the D string, middle finger, G sharp with the index finger. Again, as always with Tommy, when he plays chords like this, it's a beautiful sounding chord, but for some people this will be just too much to ask from their left hand fingering. After the open chord, you will be moving back to a bar at the 2nd fret, and this makes the fingering feel really awkward in the beginning. So the thumb over the side of the neck on the 2nd fret, pinky on the 4th fret of the A string, and then a little bar across the 2nd fret. That's the chord you end up with at the end of the bar. It passes by so quickly that it doesn't actually feel like this chord is what the movement is centered around, but it is a difficult fingering. What you can do to make this easier is just leave out the C sharp and adjust the bass pattern to just 2 strings for this one chord. So you will be playing this, only 2nd fret on the low E string, 2nd fret on the D string. This is the exact same fingering, with the only thing I removed was the pinky on the 4th fret. So the original fingering. Alternative fingering. Melody is exactly the same, you're only skipping one bass note. As always with these alternatives, it's not how Tommy intended it. He practices and writes these songs exactly the way he wants to, but if this chord, and it is a lot to ask for the left hand, if this feels impossible, then try the alternative fingering in the beginning. Who knows, maybe later on you can add in that huge chord and learn it exactly the way Tommy wrote it. After that, we're moving down to an F major 7th chord. By now, the pull-off movement and the thumb pick movement should start feeling a bit more natural. Ending on an F chord with an added sixth to E dominant 7, sus4 to E dominant, and back to the very first chord. Let me play that section back to back. It's 2 times exactly the very same thing. So those 4 bars are repeated 2 times. I'm going to play them through back to back right now. The first time on that F sharp chord, I will use the original fingering. The second time around, I'll use the alternative fingering. So if you hear them back to back, you can probably judge for yourself if it works in the song or not. Here we go. So the rhythmic thrust of that adjusted fingering is just a little less because the fifth is missing out in the bass line, but you are able to play the melody all the way through. One more time, really slowly, and then on to the next section. Then you're back into the first section. Now there's one thing I almost forgot. We talked about that little melodic variation, starting the melody before the beat or exactly on the beat. So 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So that starting of the melody on the beat or before the beat is something that Tommy changes all the way through this second section. So you're practically always starting on the open E string. And one time Tommy plays this on the beat, the very next time he plays it before the beat. Again, there's not really a set rule. This is how it sounds if you play it all on the beat. Now, it's seldom this black or white with Tommy. It's not always on the beat or always before the beat. He changes it around by bar. So that's what you should do as well. One thing to look out for, if you play that open E string before the first beat, then always make sure it rings out across the next chord. Make sure you don't actually accidentally mute the string when changing to the next chord. That open E string has to ring out. Now, if you add in those 2 variations together, you might end up with something a little bit like this. So we're starting on the beat, 3, 4, before the beat, on the beat, on the beat, before, so that's how you can make that part work. So make sure to practice those variations separately. So first starting on the beat, then starting before the beat, and then try mixing them up. So that's it. You know the verse, which was the first part, and the chorus, which is the second part. And now what you get again is a verse and a chorus. So what you already know is just repeated. Only the very last 2 bars are changed, because then we'll be heading over into the bridge. Let me play it one time for you, a bit more up to speed, but not lightning speed like Tommy Emmanuel does. Here we go. So we ended with the exact same section you already saw in the beginning of the tutorial video. Now we're moving over to the chorus, and again, it's exactly the same. Ending with, you know that part already. It's the same thing we used in the verses, the D chord and the C chord, but now we're using this little part to move over into the bridge. The bridge is a completely new section. I'm gonna play it for you one time and then I'm gonna come back. Let me start from the D chord. And back to the next section. Now, let's have a look at that. A lot of the fingerings will be familiar. We're starting out on the same A chord. Same fill. Going to the A major ninth and straight back to the A major. So hammering on, open A string, index finger, 2nd fret, ring finger, 4th fret, open D string, and then to a very, very typical Tommy Emmanuel chord. Pinky, 6th fret on the G string, index finger, 3rd fret on the B string, and ring finger, 5th fret on the high E string. It's chordy, uses it in Those Who Wait, in I've Always Thought of You. There's quite a few songs of Tommy's that use this particular chord voicing. So we're basically arpeggiating the chord up, hammering on to 2 times the 4th fret, middle finger, ring finger, sorry, on the G string, pinky on the E string, sliding down to the 2nd fret and removing the pinky for an open E string. To C sharp minor 7th, and then just a bar across the 2nd fret for F sharp minor 7. Going from a G added 9th chord, we used this in the first section as well, to a D major 7th, with the thumb over the side of the neck. Again, if this feels difficult, then you can swap it out with this fingering as well. So the original fingering. Or an adjusted fingering. Using the index finger, then you have to swap around from this. It's a bit more work. If you can manage with the thumb over the side of the neck, it's actually easier. Hammering on to, again, an E dominant 7th chord and to an A chord. One more time, that whole section. And the next section is repetition again. That's the new section, so you're ending up on the G chord. Again, we're using a pull-off, but this time you don't have to aim for the bass note, you're pulling away from the bass note. Same thing on the F chord, hammering on, starting on the bass note. And then moving to a C sus2 chord, and a B flat 6th chord, so you're only playing the bass note on the 1st fret here, and everything else is a bar across the 3rd fret with the high G on top. So that whole section slowly. And you're back into the first section. Now the strumming part on the C sus2 and the B flat 6 chord aren't set in stone as well. You can do your own thing with it. Tommy sometimes likes to add in these percussive hits as well. It's not, you don't have to do that if you want to, but there's room for it as well. So one more time, the bridge, really slowly, so you can piece it all together, and then we're off to the next section. On to the next section. Now you already know the next part. It's again the verse, the very first thing we looked at. Let me play the last 2 chords, then continue into the next part of the song, and if anything new pops up, I'll stop and explain right away. Up until this point, but right now the next few bars are something different. And then the rest of the chorus is exactly the same. Now the first 2 bars are something different. Tommy transposes the main melody from A major to C major. What you're doing is you're playing the exact same thing as you did here in open position, but now with the bar at the 3rd fret. That of course means that you will have to adjust quite a few fingerings. So you're doing the pull-off now, the same pattern as you did, as you've done so many times before up until this point. But you're changing over to a C major 9th voicing right away. Again, with a bar across all 6 strings, so you can keep the boom chick bass line going across 3 strings. Then exactly the same thing with an open A and E bass note. So the pull-off pattern or the fingering looks a bit different because you don't need the full C chord anymore. So what you're doing the second time around is you're holding down a sort of G shape with an open A string in the bass, and you're pulling off from the 5th fret to the 3rd fret and changing the pinky right away to the 5th fret on the G string. Again, making sure that when you pull off, when you target a note, you play the bass note at the exact same time. G chord and a little bar at the 5th fret with the ring finger. And then the rest of the verse, the rest of the chorus, sorry, is exactly the same. So again, those first 2 bars. And everything else is exactly the same as before. Back to A. And to the very last verse. Now, one more thing I would like to just point your attention to. If you're transferring from the verse stay on the same fret. So don't go looking for that next chord. You're moving down and you're staying on the exact same place. Last verse. So that's the only difference. The very last time you're extending that D to C run one more time from C to B flat. So again the C chord, moving down to B flat. Same fingering, same pull-off pattern, same bass line pattern every single time. Repeat the C chord. And that's it. On to the final part, the ending. Now this is going full force Tommy. There's a lot here to take in. Let me go over it one more time. Just a bit slower than concert speed so you can have a first look at what's going on. That's the first part of the ending. So what's happening? It's almost everything is strumming. So you're starting out on an A chord, moving to a B minor 7th, moving to an E minor 7th. The very first time, more or less longer chords, especially the A chord is just left ringing out because you have to transfer to the new part. So and that's the lick in between. So starting out on an open A string, ring finger sliding up from the 3rd fret to the 4th fret to an open D string, hammering on with the index finger on the 1st fret and sliding up to the 2nd fret. And this note, 5th fret with the pinky on the G string, that's where you're aiming for in terms of timing. So it's just reverse movement going down. So index finger sliding down to the 1st fret and pulling off to the open string. And then middle finger to the 3rd fret on the low E string and pulling off to the low E. And then you're ending back up on the A chord. So the full lick really slowly. There on, it's basically repeating every single time. The main difference is now you'll be adding in a percussive hit on that A chord. So what you're doing is you're playing downstroke, upstroke, tapping the strings and then tapping the strings and playing the next chord is actually one single movement. So tapping, and as you pull away your right hand, you're forming or you're playing a chord at the same time. So you see, tap and pulling away forms the chord. Times, and the very last time you end up on the long A chord. One more time with the descending D, C, B flat lick in front of it, and you've got the full ending apart from the very last blazing pentatonic lick or a Tommy Emmanuel country fill. Here we go. First, the very last chordal part. You could end the song there, or you can go full Tommy Emmanuel and play the very last lick. So it's really a lot of hammer on and pull off tricks. So what you're doing is you're playing the pinky 5th fret on the D string, the G string open, and this is the same note. This is what will give the lick that rolling quality. So you're playing with the thumb pick 5th fret on the D string with the index finger open G string, and then with the thumb pick moving up to the G string, 2nd fret with the index finger pulling away to the open string again. And that's the rolling movement you get. So the picking pattern in the right hand has to be the exact same thing every time. So thumb, index finger, thumb, pull off, thumb, index finger, thumb, pull off. And again, it's dividing the workload between the left and the right hand. None of them is really doing much, but you have to make sure that coordination between the left hand and the right hand and that pull-off is exactly right. Pull-off has to be in tempo, has to be an exact 16th note or 8th note, depending on how you view the tempo. So, but make sure you get this rolling. And try to leave as much ringing out as possible. Not to play it really stuttering, but try making it as fluid as possible. And then when you're done playing this lick, you slide down to the 4th fret with the pinky, pull off to the 2nd fret, pull off to the open D string, sliding down from the 3rd fret to the 2nd fret to an open string on the A string, and then pinky on the 3rd fret, sliding up to the 5th fret for the last bass note, and then if you can manage this stretch, it's a long way to go, sliding up from the 1st fret to the 2nd fret while keeping down the A bass note, and make sure you don't accidentally bend that bass note. So that's the full lick. I forgot, for one reason or another, I always play these two with pull-offs instead of the slide down. The slide down is actually more logical because this puts your hand in a better posture or a better position to switch over to the pinky. But I will play it like this. 3 pull-offs, 2 pull-offs, sorry, and then to the pinky on the low E string. With the rest of the ending included. If you really want to put in the finishing touch, try to leave that low open A string ringing out as you're playing the first part of that last lick that sort of binds it all together. There you go, that's the whole of Timberlake Road. Have fun with this one, see you next time, and check back soon on the channel for more Tommy Emmanuel tutorials. Bye bye.